Is AI and programs like Opus Clip AI ready for the real world for people that make long form content and podcasters? And that's going to be the long form video that we're going to let Opus Clip AI chop up into 3 to 5 minute segments. So we've talked before about Opus Clip AI and what we like and don't like about the program when it comes to short form 60-second videos to use on platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube Shorts. But the question arises, what about longer form clips from your podcast or long form videos that are about 3 to 5 minutes long? How well does it do? So I'm going to present to you three 3-minute video clips, and you can decide for yourself if programs like Opus Clip AI is a solution for you, and if it's worth paying AI to do your clips or to basically hire it out through a third party, or like I have been doing, just do it yourself. So I'm going to be using episode 33, where we discuss Peter Jackson's Beatles documentary, Get Back, with special guest Amanda Wirig. And that's going to be the long form video that we're going to let Opus Clip AI chop up into 3 to 5 minute segments. Prior to showing you each of the clips, I'm going to explain Opus AI's explanation as to why these are their top 3 clips from that long form podcast, just so that you guys know how Opus Clip AI works. They give it a score between 0 and 100, 100 being the best clip possible, and they break it down into 4 different categories as to why that particular clip that they chose just works. Now, all 3 clips that you're going to see are unedited, with the exception of I went in and fixed the audio before uploading it to Opus Clip AI, but I have done no extra work on the editing. I want you guys to see what they present to me as their top 3 clips. In the end, let me know in the comments what you guys think, and you can determine yourself if Opus Clip AI is worth putting into your editing arsenal. The first clip we're going to look at here is 3 minutes and 24 seconds. Opus Clip AI gave it a score of 94 out of 100. And you can see the 4 categories that they've graded based off of if there's a hook, flow, engagement, and trend. And then Opus Clip will basically explain to you why they gave it that grade. So this first clip is actually the 3rd clip. The first 2 were 60-second clips. Their top 2 clips they scored were 60-second clips, so I had to remove those. So this was the 3rd overall best clip that they made from that long form podcast where we were talking about Peter Jackson's Beatles documentary with Amanda. This particular clip here, they're giving it a title of Exploring Music Genres from Punk to Classic Rock and Everything in Between. Now, why this particular clip is ranked number 3 is, let's go ahead and break down the 4 categories. So for hook, it gave it an A-, and they said the beginning of the video catches the audience's attention by discussing the speaker's changing musical preferences and their newfound appreciation for the Beatles. To improve, the speaker could include a short, intriguing story or a surprising statement about their musical transformation. So we're going to go ahead and click over to the flow, which they also give an A-. The content is coherent and covers the necessary points, but it lacks a clear conclusion. To create a more complete narrative, the speaker could summarize the main points discussed about the musical journey and provide a closing statement that reflects on the transformative power of music. For engagement, it gave it an A rating. The video delivers valuable content by discussing the speaker's evolving taste in music and their current appreciation for the Beatles. It establishes a personal connection by sharing personal experiences and reflections. To further enhance the personal connection, the speaker could include more specific examples of how the Beatles' music resonates with them. And then finally, trend. And I believe this is whether it's a trending topic on social media that Opus Clip AI has determined that people are talking about. They gave this an A- for trend. The video indirectly touches on the trending topic of musical exploration and expanding musical horizons. To align better with trending topics, the speaker could discuss the influence of diverse genres as contemporary music or the importance of exploring different musical styles. So I do like how they give you examples of why they're scoring it a certain way and under what category, how they're breaking that down, but also ways to improve it. Now, whether or not that's all kind of AI mumbo jumbo just to make it seem like AI is doing a lot of work here, I'm going to leave that for you guys to decide. Let's roll the clip. It's 3 minutes and 24 seconds, and then I'll go into the second clip that they picked. Paul and Ringo said, "Yeah, let's go ahead and do it."
Well, Paul's come out in different interviews and he said that exact same thing. He's like, yeah, I just remember us fighting and hating each other. And then I went back and I saw all of the footage and realized that we were actually happy almost all of the time. I don't know.
There was a lot more than just the negative stuff that happened. And that's part of the great thing about Get Back, and with it being as long as it was, I think like 6 hours, the final project that came out, the drama part was because it wasn't just this happy-go-lucky, behind the scenes of making something. There were some things that they had to deal with. I'm kind of curious, before we really start to dive into this project, you mentioned, I mean, you're an artist also, kind of your dad was into music too. What kind of music were you listening to? Like I was born in 75. In the 80s, I lived out in Los Angeles, and that was when I was, where I grew up, I was more into kind of a little bit of pop, but it was like West Coast rap. The Beatles were it wasn't gonna fly with what I was listening to or be interested in. What were you listening to at the time that, late 80s, 90s, where you were coming up?
So I was I was born in 79. And so I was a teenager at the height of the whole grunge thing and alternative and all that. And I was playing in a punk band in high school, and I grew up on like classic rock stuff. So I listened to a ton of that, but I was also listening to, Nirvana and the Lemonheads and the Breeders and that kind of thing. And then I also, I live in Minneapolis now, but I was living in southern Minnesota when I was growing up, and, discovered the Replacements and Husker Du and the Suburbs and all these amazing Minnesota bands that were, like punk and post-punk. And so I was really heavy into all of that stuff. But I've always been also like a huge melody person.
Mm-hmm.
And the Beatles are like the epitome of that. I always loved like 60s pop and British Invasion and psychedelic stuff and all of that. And I mean, it fit right in with what I loved. It just gave me a chance to dive deeper into the catalog.
The interesting thing with everything that you mentioned there, as far as the genre and the type of music you were listening to, that was the exact opposite of what I was listening to. Everything that you said, I kind of wasn't into, but this crazy thing of vinyl collecting in the last few years has given me this opportunity to where I'm like, you know what? I want to open myself up and check out some of these bands or maybe a style of music that I know that I've had a lot of friends that were into. And I kind of want to see what it's all about. All right, so let's get into the second clip that they rated. This is the 9th best clip that Opus Clip AI came up with. Again, it's not going to be number 4 because, the last one we just did was the number 3 overall. There were several that were 60-second clips made for TikTok and YouTube Shorts and everything. So as far as a 3-minute clip or longer, I basically gave it the parameters of 3 to 5 minutes. This is the next best medium-sized clip from long-form video. So this is number 9. They gave it a score of 83 out of 100, and the title of The Beatles, Unveiling Untold Secrets from Their Recording Sessions. So kind of cool that they're coming up with potential titles that you can use based off of the clip that they pulled. So for Hook, they gave it an A-. The beginning of the video captures the audience's attention by mentioning a controversial aspect of the documentary. To make the hook even stronger, adding a brief, intriguing statement or quotation from the documentary could be beneficial. For flow, they gave it an A. The content maintains logical coherence throughout and reaches a satisfying conclusion. The necessary points are covered effectively. For engagement, another score of an A. The video successfully delivers valuable content and establishes a personal connection with the viewer by discussing the ethical implications of recording private conversations. To enhance the personal connection, the presenter can share their own perspective on the matter. And finally, on trend, they gave it a C. The video does not align with any trending topics. To improve the relevance to current public interest, it could explore themes like e-commerce, sustainability, or social media. So is that helpful to me? Not really, because that's what our podcast episode was about, right? It is what it is. But this is their explanation as to, is this fitting into a current trend on social media, and potentially why the clip may or may not resonate well with viewers. Let's roll this next clip. You guys determine, does that fit with what they're saying? And listening to Paul and John talk about this, I'm getting chills thinking about it, because you're seeing something very open, honest, and true, because they had no idea they were being recorded. Do you remember that part of the documentary?
Yeah. And I had a little bit of an issue with that, with the fact that Michael Lindsay Hogg planted recording devices. I think it was in the flower arrangements on the table.
I think you're right. Yeah. And explain, do you know who is that?
So he's the director of the original film.
Okay.
It's also been rumored that he might be the son of Orson Welles.
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting.
It hasn't been officially confirmed or denied, but there are rumors about that. And I mean, he was pretty young at the time that he did this. He had done some other things, like he did the Stones Rock and Roll Circus, and he was around in those circles. But yeah, that was his idea, and I kind of thought it was really unethical for him to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It would, having that now, I'm glad we have that recording.
Right.
But and I think, when you look back in the history of what had been leading up to that point, when Brian Epstein, their manager, died in '67, like they were just, like '67 is when they did Sgt. Pepper, and like they were like changing the world. Things are getting really, really big. And then Brian dies. And Brian was like their anchor. He was the manager. He arranged all of that stuff, and he was no longer there. And Paul definitely has his own workaholic tendencies, and it's just why he's still touring at 81. But he didn't want this band to fail, and he felt that there needed to be somebody kind of keeping the machine going.
Right.
So I can totally see his point of view. At the same time, he's also come back and said multiple times that he always thought of George as a little brother, because they were a year apart, and and George was the youngest in the band. And at the time they met, I want to say George was like 15 or something. I mean, like babies. And he always kind of had that mindset of George being the little brother. And I don't think it dawned on him that he was still treating him that way as they were growing older together. So
right. Yeah, and that I had heard kind of this grandiose rumors of the animosity starting to build between them. And you kind of think, when you have four artists like this together in a band, you're all creative and you all can't have your way. And like you were saying with Paul and John were the oldest, and they were the ones that had kind of started the group, right?
Well,
I mean,
actually John and Ringo were the oldest. Ringo is the oldest. and then Paul and then George. But it was John in his own band, and then Paul saw them playing and kind of like showed off what he could do and was asked to join. And then Paul got George in, and then Ringo came, quite a bit later. But yeah, so like it because John and Paul were the primary songwriters,
Right.
they were really the head of everything.
And that dynamic is hard to break, especially when, you've got this popular group, and that's just how things have been going. But George, it just, as I'm diving into more of the Beatles stuff, was wanting to, start to contribute a little bit more. Let's get into the third and final example we're going to use here. This is clip number 12 overall, with the title of The Beatles Unveiling Hidden Treasures and Controversies. They gave this a score of 80 out of 100. And for Hook, they gave it an A-. The beginning of the video could be more attention-grabbing by starting with a captivating statement or an intriguing question related to the core topic, such as, have you ever wondered about the significant differences between the American and British versions of Beatles albums? I actually kind of like that. So that gives you an idea that if you're going to put in a little extra effort to massage these clips to make them a little better, they're giving you some tips. I think that one there is a good one. For flow, they're giving this an A-. The content flows logically and covers the necessary points. It could be improved by providing more specific examples of the differences between the American and British versions of Beatles albums. For engagement, the video could establish a stronger personal connection by sharing personal experiences or anecdotes related to the Beatles albums or their impact on the viewer's life. And then finally, for trend, they gave it a B. The video does not align with any trending topics. To make it more relevant, the video could discuss how the Beatles albums still resonate with modern listeners or analyze their influence on contemporary music. So the ways that you could improve on the clips, again, I kind of like how they're giving you ideas of maybe what you could supplement in when you're making your clips. And it's also something that, as a podcast host, if I were to do this over again or for future shows, there's other follow-up questions that I could ask to make it a little bit better, forward thinking into making better clips. So here's the third and final clip, and then we'll do the conclusion.
At the time, I was just like, okay, well, it's this album, not realizing that there were American versions that were different from the British versions. So I grew up listening to the American versions first, and I,
Okay.
made them on cassettes and everything. And then I discovered, oh, well, there's a British version of these that are different. And then you get into the whole mono versus stereo thing. And there are certain tracks where there are things that are completely different on the mono version versus the stereo version. So it's like, how deep into this do you want to go? Because it'll take you years. But it's great because you don't get bored.
You're right. I mean, there's got to be, in just what you were saying, and then there's the whole soap opera drama of when they break up, and then over the course of the next 10, 20 years of they get, a few of them get back together, make amends, and then we lose John in 1980. And then we lose George in like 2001.
Yep.
So around that time. And I have watched so many YouTube documentaries just because I'm like, I want to know more of like the behind the scenes and their relationship. Like, I am totally vested in this, in addition to loving the albums that I don't have all the albums either. Like, I'm just slowly trying to get to them. And like you were talking about the stereo versus mono. And then there's I just learned the other day, there was this naked version of, was it
Let It Be?
Was it Let It Be?
Yeah. So
To where,
this was like, God, 20 years ago, something like that.
yeah.
Well, they stripped it back because so when they were working on the original Let It Be album, and then things kind of blew up with the band, the rest of the band brought in Phil Spector to work on this record, and he added strings and horns and all of this stuff, and Paul was furious that
Mhm.
Phil Spector took liberty with his songs and did things he did not want. So Let It Be Naked is basically him stripping all of that away to what he envisioned the record to be like originally.
The waters for the Beatles, like you said, this runs so deep, and I look forward to just being entertained through this whole thing. So let's, we can't cover everything within
Yeah.
the hour that we have here, nor can we get super detailed, because I think we could spend hours on the Get Back documentary. And
Mhm.
shoot, we may decide at the end of this, like, we need another uh follow-up episode to kind of get into some more of the details. All right, so there you have it. 3 examples of using Opus Clip AI, 3 to 5 minute clips from a long form podcast video. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Is this something that you guys would use? How effective were they? Do you think a lot of the scores and explanations are kind of mumbo jumbo and it's just kind of they're just throwing out words that you want to hear to make the AI sound like it's actually doing a lot of work? What do you guys think? Is this worth it to you? Is it worth paying for? Does it help you in your editing process? I hope this was really helpful for you guys. If you like it and you want to see more videos like this, go ahead and subscribe and shoot me a like, send me some comments, let me know what you guys think, and good luck on your editing journeys using AI.